Dr. Death, known as Dr. Leonard, or AKA Dr. Death, has MEnD Medical Correctional is in jails and prisons in over 34 counties in the state of Minnesota. So Dr. Death has been doing pretty good financially, but he hasn't been doing pretty good as a doctor. Recently, Hardel Sherrell was in the care of Dr. Death, or Dr. Leonard, and it resulted in his death. There have also been other black and brown bodies who have been in the care of MEnD Correctional Facility, and it has resulted in death. Today, we have Michelle Gross from Communities United Against Police Brutality. Just real quick, I'm excited and I'm moving a little fast. We're out here today to demand justice for Hardel Sherrell, who was murdered and tortured, in my opinion, in Beltrami County Jail. He was sent to the hospital, and he was in MEnD Correctional Care is a part of that. So we're here to demand that Governor Tim Walz end the contract with MEnD Correctional Facility immediately, and that charges be brought against Dr. Death, or AKA Dr. Leonard. Michelle Gross, a social justice activist and a retired nurse, is an organizer and one of the founders of Communities United Against Police Brutality, who does excellent work in our community around police brutality and law enforcement accountability. She's going to come up and talk to us about some letters that were recently uncovered in this new ongoing re-review investigation in the matter of Hardel Sherrell. Give her a round of applause.
Yes. Doors off here. Thank you for coming, Michelle. Here. Yay. It's right. Yes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Gross, and I'm one of the founders and president of Communities United Against Police Brutality. But I'm also a retired nurse and currently a paralegal. I do work primarily in medical cases that have a component of reviewing medical records, and I work for the attorney that is Shea Perry's attorney. And so I'm extremely familiar with this particular case. In fact, I'll never forget the day that Shea called me at first because Treher knew me. And he said, you know, I've got the right person for you to call. And I'll never forget her calling and telling me what had happened to Hardel. And I knew instantly what was wrong. I knew immediately. The first thing I said was, you know, he didn't die from pneumonia. He died from a terrible disease called Guillain-Barré. And Guillain-Barré is a disease that occurs where it's an autoimmune disease where your nervous system is attacked by your immune system after you've had a virus. It's not very common, but it's well known to people who have been in the medical field for a while and who've worked in emergency rooms and in primary care, because it's a known complication of a viral illness such as the flu. And so when she told me what had happened to him, I instantly knew that there was something very, very wrong with what the official word was. And so, I immediately said, no. He died from medical neglect from Guillain-Barré. Guillain-Barré is a survivable illness. It's a progressive paralytic disease that causes your muscles to shut down. They start at your core, and they move down your legs, and they move up your body, and eventually you stop being able to breathe. It is not curable, but it is absolutely manageable, and people recover from it if they receive hospitalization. We have to give people supportive care. We have to do things to boost to address their immune system and to boost the good parts of their immune system, and we have to support their respiratory system so that they don't shut down and stop breathing. What happened in Hardel's case is that they simply didn't believe anything was wrong. They refused to pay attention to all of the symptoms that he had, which were just pointing to this thing. They refused to pay attention to it, and as a result, they left him laying on the floor for days and days as he suffocated slowly to death and died from lack of care. He also was not given proper nutrition. He went 3 days without food and roughly a day and a half, almost 2 days without any hydration of any kind. And this was well documented on the videos. You know, that's one of the things about jail deaths, is that there's lots of video. And so I looked at probably over 200 videos in reviewing this case. And I can tell you that it was like a nightmare. It really, truly was. What happened to him is unconscionable. And for all of these medical people to know what was happening to him and to walk away and let this go on, because some correction officers, what we call COs, thought that he was faking. You know, you are an independent medical professional. You are supposed to use your professional judgment to make your own decisions. You don't allow a corrections officer to tell you what is happening with a person. If there was a person laying on the ground over here, you know, and I drove up and I saw somebody doing CPR on that person, I couldn't just take over CPR, because as a professional, it is my responsibility to do my own assessment. I would do it fast, but then I would begin the CPR, because as medical professionals and paraprofessionals, we're responsible for doing our own assessments. And the idea that you would allow a corrections officer to tell you, he's fake and don't pay any attention to him, and then you ignore the obvious symptoms, the obvious signs that something's going deeply wrong with someone, is appalling to me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you a letter that has been recently uncovered. Del Shea is going to give you more of the details about how it became uncovered, but I'm going to read to you a letter, and I'm going to break down the medical parts of this letter for you, okay? This was a letter that was presented by one of the healthcare practitioners that was involved just a little bit in Hardel's case, but enough that she was deeply disturbed by what she saw. And when she tried to get him sent to the hospital, the jail administrator overruled her and said, no, he can't go. And that's another issue. Since when do we allow non-professionals, non-medical professionals, to overrule the judgment of a medical professional? That could happen in a jail or prison is outlandish to me. So I'm going to read this to you. I have been an employee with the company MEnD Correctional Care for approximately 3 weeks, beginning in mid-August. Technically, I am still in training. On August 31st, I should have been with my boss and MEnD owner, physician Dr. Todd Leonard, as I was in training, but Dr. Leonard told me he could not make it till Beltrami that morning, and I would have to go by myself. When I arrived at the Beltrami County Jail, the med tech and the RN advised me there was an inmate who was faking being paralyzed and that I would have to take a look at him. They told me he was even faking being incontinent, and that was why he was wearing adult diapers. I reviewed his chart and noticed that he was consistently hypertensive, which means high blood pressure, in the 150s and 160s over 100s, and that's very high. That's the kind of thing where we really, especially if that lower number is above 100, we want to see somebody in the hospital, okay? And it was tachycardic. And tachycardiac means that they're rapid heart rate, very rapid heart rate. An EKG had been done on August 30th. The EKG read abnormal and inferior infarct. And an inferior infarct means tissue death of the lower part of the heart, typically from a heart attack. So, you know, it's not something to just go, oh, that's a little something to wave by, okay? That he had probably had, along the way, a heart attack. I personally don't have experience reading ECGs, so I asked the RN if Dr. Leonard had seen the ECG. She told me that she read the report to Dr. Leonard over the phone, and he told her that inferior infarct is normal and the ECG is of no concern. And I have to tell you that, as a longtime nurse who has taught advanced cardiac life support and pediatric advanced life support, there is no way in hell that that's normal. That is simply not true. You see something like that on anyone, and if you've got any sense at all, you are taking them to the hospital. You simply cannot ignore a symptom like that. What it means is literally part of his heart, the bottom part of his heart has died. So this is so outlandish. When I read this, I just couldn't believe it. I asked her if the patient was on any medication for hypertension. She told me he was on lisinopril on the outside. So that's an anti-high blood pressure drug. I asked her why he was not on anything currently, and she told me he wasn't on any medication because he was saying that he was having trouble swallowing. That's an advanced symptom, again, of Guillain-Barré syndrome. The RN told me that on August 30th, Dr. Leonard advised the RN to send Hardel to the local emergency room, but the jail administrator vetoed it, saying after she had listened to Hardel's phone conversations with his family, she believed he was a flight risk. This is a guy who couldn't move his legs now, okay? Keep that in mind. I was brought to Hardel's cell by the RN, followed by a correctional staff worker. On the way, we stopped at control where the other officers were speaking very negatively about Hardel, saying he was faking his situation. When I got to Hardel's cell, I was overwhelmed by the stench. It smelled heavily of urine and sweat. Hardel was laying on his back on the floor. He was on a mat full of urine and drenched in sweat. He was wearing a diaper that was soaked with urine, the urine then soaking the mattress pad underneath him. When I looked at Hardel, I immediately noticed that the right side of his mouth was drooping. That's a neurologic symptom, again, consistent with Guillain-Barré. That's a situation where when you see a person's mouth drooping, you start to think of strokes, you start to think of cranial nerve injuries, things like that. Those are very, very frightening symptoms. These are not symptoms to be ignored. When he spoke with me, his words were slightly slurred. He looked at me and he asked me to please believe him that something was wrong. He told me no one was believing him. He told me he felt numb from his waist down. Again, another symptom of Guillain-Barré. He said he had pain in his back. Yet another symptom of Guillain-Barré. He asked if he could have his diaper changed and have clean clothes. He said the officers were refusing to change his diaper and clothes or help him clean up. I asked him what was the last time he ate or drank something. He told me he could not eat because something was wrong with his swallowing. Again, another symptom of more advanced symptom of Guillain-Barré. He said his throat felt weird and that it was difficult to swallow. He said the day before I saw him, he was able to drink 2 small containers of apple juice with assistance from an RN. During that time, though, on the video, you can see that he's complaining about choking. He's having difficulty getting that material down the apple juice down his throat. The RN was getting Hardel's vital signs with the machine as I was speaking with him. He was tachycardic with a heart rate of 132. We consider 90 to be tachycardic, so he was very tachycardic. His blood pressure was hypertensive. I cannot remember the exact numbers. His O2 saturation was 83 or 84. O2 means oxygen, and that's a measure of how much oxygen is in your blood. We treat people at 94%. He was at 83 or 84%, which means he was hardly getting any oxygen to his brain at all. And that is really a serious sign. It shows his respiratory system was shutting down at that point. I said that he needed to go to the emergency room immediately, and that I was concerned that he had had a stroke. I was told the only way he is going to the hospital was in a deputy vehicle with armed officers. While I waited for the correctional staff, I directed that Hardel be changed into clean clothes and that his diaper be changed. The RN started to put on a new diaper and new clothes. The correctional staff would not help change the inmate. I was assessing him and noticed that his body was cold, but he was extremely diaphoretic. So diaphoresis means sweat. He was sweating crazy, but his body was cold. So clearly some things were going wrong. And when you see those kind of heart rates, respiratory rates, blood pressure, diaphoresis, those things indicate what we call a autonomic nervous system disorder. And that means basically that his nervous system was shutting down at that point. And basically, he had no Babinski reflex, meaning his nerves in his feet weren't working. His grasp reflex was weak, especially on the right side. I started to help the RN put new clothes on, which was difficult as he was like moving dead weight. While rolling him slightly, Hardel was crying out in pain. The officers at some point brought a wheelchair for Hardel. The RN was upset the officers would not help lift him into the wheelchair, so she went down to control and asked officers to help lift him into the chair. The wheelchair did not have rest for his legs. When Hardel was getting changed into clean clothes, I remember him saying to please don't let the officers touch him. He was also crying. He had tears running from his eyes when he pleaded with me to get him help. He told me that he was scared. He stated that he wanted to speak with his family. That night, I had trouble sleeping as I thought about the condition in which I found Hardel. I contemplated as how and to whom I should speak. I was just grateful that he got to a hospital. That was Friday evening, August 31st, and a long holiday weekend followed. I did not find out that Hardel had passed away until yesterday, September 4th. I was training at another jail with Dr. Leonard. He was sitting across from me as we were reviewing charts. He received a phone call, and I heard him tell whoever he was speaking with that there had been a death in the Beltrami County Jail. My heart sunk because I knew it was probably Hardel. When Dr. Leonard got off the phone, he told me he was talking with his attorney. He told me that he was sorry that he'd forgotten to tell me Hardel had died on Sunday night. He told me that Hardel had been medically cleared from the emergency room. He told me that they did a thorough examination and CT scan, which found nothing. I told Dr. Leonard that I disagreed, that there was nothing wrong. I told him that the vital signs and the ECGs don't lie, which are both of which are consistently abnormal with Hardel. I also told him that I was very confident that when it comes to my clinical judgment and that something was very wrong with Hardel, he was very sick. Dr. Leonard told me, quote, not to jump to conclusions, and he said that jumping to conclusions could jeopardize his company. Wow. So that's what he had to talk about. He also, at a different point, told her to tell people that if they asked, that he had stuck a sock down his throat. So that's the quality of medical care that people get at MEnD Medical. Hardel is not by any means the only person that has been harmed by MEnD Medical, but and he's not even the only person that's died from MEnD Medical. In my personal opinion, I believe that Dr. Leonard should have his license pulled, and I believe that he should go to prison for criminal medical negligence.
Yes.
That is my belief.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Ladies and gentlemen, this type of medical care, no matter if you're in, because you go to jail, Hardel didn't even go to court yet. So Hardel didn't even get sentenced for anything. So going to jail should not be a death sentence. Inmates deserve proper medical care just like any other citizen in America. So Dr. Leonard should definitely go to jail if he's telling nurses to cover up evidence. And this is what we've been talking about for a long time, is the art of the cover-up. But now we're starting to see how it works. Now we're starting to see that it's not just jails involved in the art of the cover-up, but it's also correctional care that is supposed to give care to inmates. So the lawyer for Shea Perry is here, Mr. Zoloff. Mr. Zoloff, if you could come up and say a couple words.
Hello everyone, my name is Zorislav Laterman. I represent Ms. Perry and Hardel Sherrell in a case that we have filed in federal court against Beltrami County MEnD Medical Care. I came here today more as a support for Shea than a lawyer. She's been fighting this fight for almost 2 years now and nonstop. She had back surgery last fall, and she was fighting even from a hospital bed. So we're here to remind staff at MEnD Medical Care, Dr. Leonard, and anyone else who provides medical care for jail inmates in Minnesota jails, that humane medical care is required by the United States Constitution. It's not a choice, it's not an option, and people who are in jail have a right to receive humane medical treatment. And if people are providing care in the state that aren't able to offer that sort of treatment, then officials, elected officials in our state, have to take action to make that change. Again, I came here as a show of support. I won't say anything further at this time, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
Yeah. When it comes to the lawsuit in general, MEnD was listed on the lawsuit. I think some doctors were as well. And there's specific evidence that sort of points to their negligence. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the case that we have filed involves MEnD. It involves Beltrami County and its various officers and administrative staff. Also involves Sanford Health. With respect to MEnD, the allegations in the complaint pertain to generally Hardel's last 2 days of his life, which he lived suffering in his own urine and his own feces on the jail floor. He came back from the hospital with specific instructions, discharge instructions. He came back with a list of symptoms, and the instructions were clear. If these symptoms develop or if they get worse, he was to be brought back to the ER immediately. When he came back from the hospital, he continued to deteriorate to the point where he was essentially limp. He was brought back to an observation cell. Several hours later, he fell off the bunk. This is on video. This isn't a theory we have. You can watch this on video. He is left at that point on the floor in that same position for hours until somebody finally came in the morning to check on him. He was never placed back into bed. He was left on the floor. He continued to deteriorate. His entire body shut down. He was unable to move completely anymore at that point. You don't leave a person who is paralyzed on the jail floor. Eventually, Hardel's respiratory organs gave out. He was unable to breathe anymore. And this is very sad to say, but he died a very slow and painful death. This is a person who could literally no longer have the energy and the capacity to breathe. This is what our case is about, and this is what the claims against MEnD Medical Care pertain to, is the fact that he came back from the hospital, he continued to deteriorate, he continued to show signs of basically his entire body shutting down, and he was never brought back to the emergency room as he should have. If he was brought back to the ER, we have evidence indicating that he could have been saved. He could have been with us here today. You know, we don't have a death penalty here in Minnesota. People who end up in jail for whatever reason should be leaving that jail on their own 2 feet the same way they came in. And that's what our case is about. We demand humane medical care for people that are in Minnesota jails, and we're going to keep fighting until that happens.
Was this cruel and unusual?
Absolutely. To leave a person paralyzed on the jail floor who can't breathe, who can't move, who is urinating and defecating on himself, to leave him to suffer that way and to die due to the fact that he just couldn't breathe anymore is absolutely cruel and unusual.
Your thoughts on the FBI being asked to launch an investigation?
We're grateful for the efforts that were made over the last several months. This is the byproduct of Del Shea continuing to fight and never giving up. Like I said, she started this fight from day one, and she hasn't ever stopped. She's been fighting for the truth. We've been looking for answers, and finally, just with a combination of things, we were able to provide to local authorities sort of a summary of what's been happening at Beltrami County Jail over the last 4 years. We were able to uncover this letter that was read to you several minutes ago. All of these events were happening over the last 2 weeks, and they culminated in the Department of Corrections requesting that the federal authorities start investigating what's happening at Beltrami County Jail. We're grateful for that, and we are absolutely certain that the investigation will reveal a ton of evidence pertaining to our case, pertaining to Beltrami County, and pertaining to similar situations where young people who should be leaving the jail, like I said, on their own 2 feet, are dying unnecessarily, leaving mothers without children, leaving their children behind, and unable to provide for their families due to the fact that they come into jail and they leave on a gurney.
Do you believe there's a pattern of this type of shoddy care across the facilities that MEnD is in?
I'll respond to that in terms of just directing you to review other cases. I can't speak to a pattern personally, but if you take a look at other pending cases that are currently being litigated against MEnD, against Beltrami County Jail, you can make your own conclusions about whether or not there is a pattern here.
For quick clarification on the letter that was read, can you just describe who that was from again?
The letter that was read to you was written by a MEnD employee. She was one of the last medical staff at the jail to see Hardel alive. She saw him on August 31st. She saw him before he was taken to the emergency room, and she did not see him since then. So this is a woman who worked at MEnD and who submitted what was read to you is a complaint that she submitted to the Ramsey County Medical Examiner's Office, asking for an investigation to be completed into what happened to Hardel. Why this letter was not referenced or mentioned anywhere in the autopsy report is a question that we should all ask the Ramsey County Medical Examiner's Office.
Yep.
And we're going there next.
That's right. We're going to go after
Yes,
Ramsey
we
County
are.
Medical Examiner. The Minnesota Nursing Board, we're coming after you. The Minnesota Board of Medical Practice. What is happening in these agencies that information was provided 2 years ago almost? And as far as we know, nothing is happening. Where is action? Why are people dying after the information was submitted to these agencies, asking them to help?
What did the autopsy report show as cause of death?
Can you say that again, ma'am?
What did the autopsy report show as cause of death?
The autopsy report doesn't indicate a cause of death. The autopsy report found that Hardel had pneumonia. He did not have pneumonia as far as we know when he went to the ER 2 days prior to his death. So the autopsy report doesn't provide any sort of clear indication of what the cause of death was. It provides several diagnoses without indicating what, if anything, caused Hardel's death. We hired our own independent pathologist who diagnosed Hardel with Guillain-Barré syndrome. That is the cause of death. All of the symptoms that he had are consistent with this condition. Unfortunately, nobody cared enough to pay attention and see the very obvious signs and symptoms that he was exhibiting. Thank you all again for coming.
See, and these are the type of attorneys we need.
Yes.
I'm
Yep.
I'm gonna refer you to my man right there, because he's doing a good job. He's not out in the media all the time. He's not out on talk shows a lot, but he's doing the work. Michelle Gross doing the work.
Yep.
Shea Perry stepping up, doing the work. We like to thank all of you guys, the news stations that came out here. Unicorn Riot.
Yes.
This is work to travel
Yes. Thank you.
2 hours outside of a city to come and confront a corrupt medical facility who is doing work in over 34 counties in the state of Minnesota. I can't say this as like this is fact, but from people that I've talked to who are in different jails, this is the pattern that MEnD has had, period, in other jails across the state of Minnesota. So right now we're gonna hear from Shea Perry, the mother of Hardel Sherrell, and she's just gonna give you some updates and just let you know how she feels about Dr. Death and Dr. Leonard and what she thinks should happen to him.
First, I want to give God the glory. For this is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. Even though the enemy meant for bad, God is going to turn this around for my good. I'm not going to allow the enemy to steal my joy and to continue to have me suffer in depression another day. He has stolen enough from me, which was my best friend, my little guy, the jokester of the family. My mom called him hard to tell. She said because it was hard to tell what he was going to do next. He loved people so much. He'd give the shirt off his back. He tried to follow in my footsteps as an evangelist. And he would give people on the street food. He would help anybody that he could. He always had a very positive attitude in life. He always saw the cup half full. And even as an evangelist, he would have to help me to see things in a different perspective. That's just who he was. He loved basketball and he was good at it, but that really wasn't what he wanted to do. Hardel had made up in his mind that this last time he had gone to jail, he said, "Mama, I'm so sorry. I let you down." And I said to Hardel, I said, "You know what, Hardel? You have to walk your path in your life. You have to walk out your own soul salvation, as everyone does." I said, "But you know, I just thank God for you because, you know, he was there for me when we were struggling and had hardly anything. Hardel would go get, you know, nickel and dime jobs to help around the house. He was just a giving guy. He was such a loving guy. And he was always making jokes. He was always making jokes. He would be like, "Ma, I got you, Ma, don't worry." Well, he told me, and I'll share with you later, a poem that he tells me now that God's got me. And I'm so grateful. But Hardel was a very kind young man. Yes, he made some mistakes. That's why he was in jail. But I am sick and tired of the media spinning negativity and telling the negatives of why they were in custody or why they were in jail. We obviously know there was a crime committed. We don't need you to focus on the negative. Focus on what happened. Let's keep the main focus the main focus. Can you guys do that? Can the media please do that? Is it not hard enough for mothers and fathers and other loved ones who've lost loved ones to tragic incidents like my son to not have to then go out and defend his honor and defend him? He's not here to defend himself. So please put the right spin on the story, which is TRUTH, truth. That's all I'm fighting for, is the truth to be told. And that's why I came out here, and I thank everybody for coming out here and supporting us. I know this trip was a little ways out of the Twin Cities, but I thank God for each and every one of you guys that came out to show solidarity with me to take MEnD down. Because MEnD needs to come to an end. End MEnD now. It is hard as a mother to stand here and tell you what happened to my son without getting teary-eyed. It's hard to fight and grieve and grieve and fight. And I am sick and tired of what Minnesota has been doing to our African American men and the African American women that we haven't even heard of. A couple of family members that came out today are Amity and John, and their son Kobe was taken too early. His life was snatched and stolen by police. And we are gathering together and we are coming together in solidarity, and we are saying enough is enough. I hope that while this media is out here today, that they would focus and get their story. I am not just here to tell you about what happened to Hardel. I am the voice for those that are still incarcerated, that have been neglected and abused, and I hope and pray that they get out and that they can tell their story. That they don't die. They're not killed like my son was. Hardel did not deserve what they did to him. His crime is irrelevant to what they did to my baby. When he died, a big part of me died as well. And I will fight for justice until the day I die, until we get what we deserve. His 3 little girls don't have a father. They don't have a father to take them to a daughter-daddy dance. They don't have a father to see them through their graduations of middle school, high school, and college. They don't have a father to walk them down the aisle and give them away. MEnD and Beltrami County Jail and Sanford Medical stole that from us. But I say no more. No more. We will continue to fight for those that have lost their lives in Beltrami County Jail. I happen to be very dear friends with, I call her Mama May. Tony May Jr.'s mom lost her son, and to senseless killing is what I call it. Our children were all murdered by the hands of the Beltrami County officers and MEnD Correctional Care. What care? It just needs to come to an end. Care? That's a joke. They didn't even get care. They didn't get basic medical care. Another gal, Stephanie Bunker. My heart goes out to her mom. And I just, again, another person that did not have to die like she did. I'm not going to get into her story only because I don't know all of the facts. But I know that it was under suspicious circumstances. All of the deaths that my attorney mentioned to you in the letter that he sent out to the governor and Keith Ellison to get this investigation underway. 5 people died in a very short period of time in Beltrami County Jail. 1 death was too much. You're talking 5 and 3 in consecutive years. It's a pattern. And I can't even find words to describe how in the report that we got that this Dr. Leonard said that he probably killed himself by giving himself a blood clot. How does that happen, Michelle?
You can't even give yourself
Can
a
you?
blood clot.
You can't give yourself a blood
You cannot
clot.
give yourself a blood clot.
Then he comes in and he says, "Oh well, maybe he stuck a sock down his throat." Is that possible, Michelle?
No, not when you're paralyzed.
Absolutely, because he couldn't swallow saliva. How could he swallow a sock? I think he needs medical. He needs medical help. He needs a medical evaluation. The doctor needs a medical evaluation. In fact, I'd like to ask him where he got his doctorates, his PhD degree. Where did he just make that up? Because I don't know. But maybe from a bubblegum machine. I don't know. But I do know this. He should not be practicing now. He should not be practicing now. His license needs to be stripped now. MEnD needs to end now, because we cannot allow yet another person's life to be stolen again in Beltrami County Jail, or any other jail for that matter. We're talking about a 150-bed unit in Beltrami County, and you're talking about 3 consecutive deaths. That's way too many for that small of a facility. I'm sure Hennepin County hasn't even had that many deaths, and Hennepin County's got, how many beds are in Hennepin County, Zoroslav, do you know? They're much bigger than Beltrami County.
875.
875. Thank you very much, Michelle. 875 beds. And they probably haven't had 1 death in the last probably 2 years. I'm going to do my research on it. But what I know has happened in Beltrami County Jail is evil, wicked, wicked, evil. And they need to shut Beltrami County Jail down. I have been saying it, and I will continue to say it. I don't know who needs to make the executive orders, how this works. I don't know the law. I tell my attorney that all the time. I say, you know what? You know the law, but I know the Lord. But together, we can do some damage, some real damage. We make a pretty good team, I got to tell you that. I love my attorney and his team, Michelle and them. Oh my goodness, I tell you, I thank God that God allowed them to come and represent Hardel Sherrell. I don't know what I would have done if I'd had another attorney, because I just don't know. I just thank God I've got them working for us. Trarin, my brother with Black Lives Matter, has been very key in why I'm standing here as well today. Let me not give him his props. He has been out here marching, protesting well before George Floyd died on my behalf. As you heard my attorney say, when I was in my hospital bed from having a major back surgery and I couldn't go out and rally, my brother was out there rallying for me. And then when people saw me come back out, because they hadn't seen me in a while, they're like, oh, they're probably like, oh, now she's out. You have no idea. And what I tell people is this. If you only know half the story, you need to. And when Medea rises up in me, I want to say something else, but I'm not going to do that. Because I am a child of the Most High God. I would like to say that if it hadn't been for a man named Paul Schnell, the DOC Commissioner Paul Schnell, we went out there. Nico does an amazing job. The videos that you all have seen on YouTube were done by Nico, amazing journalist. We want to make sure we give Nico his props. Some of you all, I don't know, I've just met you all. I have to see what y'all can do. I know what he can do. And he's going to tell the truth. He's going to get it out there. And so I thank God for Nico. And it was a hard interview. And as you know, any time a mother talks about losing her child in such a horrific way, it is very hard to talk about it because we're reliving their death all over again. And it's like, God, when do I get to grieve? Because we're out here fighting. We don't have time to grieve. We're busy fighting. And that's just not right. It's not fair. We shouldn't have to fight for what's right when what you did was wrong. And so I wanted to say, you know, Paul Schnell, we went out to the DOC. Nico showed up. Traren, of course, was there. And several of Hardel's friends came. And we went to go and confront Gray Croucher, who was at the time the lead inspector over Hardel's death. And I want to make sure that the media can take a picture of this because it's very important, because I'm going to make a point about it. But this is his first review. Traren, maybe you could get a close-up of that and then share that with them. I'm making a point in saying that Gray Croucher did a inspection on the death of my son. It's a paragraph long. And he did it 2 months after my son died. And guess what, folks? They said there were no violations. I said, you gotta be kidding me. Well, I knew what my attorney and Michelle were telling me, that was a lie from the pit of hell. And I wasn't buying it. I said, but we gotta do something about this because we gotta get the truth, Traren. I said, Traren said, well, sis, we need to go ask Gray Croucher. We need to go confront Gray Croucher. So that's what we did. We went over to the DOC, and that's exactly what we did. But when we got there, we come to find out that Gray Croucher left. Oh, he's not here anymore? We were shocked. They wouldn't tell us why he wasn't there, but you know, we can all about assume why. And Paul Schnell did a re-review. And I said, Paul, when I first met him, I said, your name is Paul? I said, your mama didn't make no mistake by naming you Paul. Do you know who you are in Christ Jesus? He said, yeah. I said, well, all right, Apostle Paul, let's wrap this up. We got to do this thing right. And he told me I didn't come out of retirement because I wanted to take this job. I came out of retirement because I want to do what's right. I said, now that's what I'm talking about. Now somebody's talking, making some sense out of something that wasn't making sense. Because that report was nothing but a made-up lie. This report, 5 pages long, is the truth. And it is all detailed in what happened and what didn't happen. And in fact, for the record, Paul Schnell that said there were so many violations, he couldn't even name them all in a 5-page report. Hello, but yet we got a report here that says there were no violations. How can that be? That's impossible, isn't it? And what I want to just read in his, if you just give me a moment. He says here, beyond the obvious problem of non-compliance, with jail policies and the corresponding jail standards is the fact that no one seemed to question the assumptions made about Mr. Sherrell's condition. In fact, the treating physician at Sanford Health included in his discharge summary that worsening weakness, difficulty standing, paralysis, loss of control of the bladder or bowels, or difficulty what? Wait, what is that? Sharon, can you help me? What does that word say? Difficulty what? What does that word say? Difficulty what?
Swallowing.
Wait, say what? Difficulty what?
Swallowing.
Swallowing. Difficulty swallowing? What? Difficulties should result in immediate medical attention being sought. Michelle, didn't you just read the report? And the nurse said he couldn't take his medication because what? Couldn't swallow. We didn't even have to list everything that was wrong if we just listed the he couldn't swallow part. But they said there were no violations. I don't understand. So now we've got, I'm going to call it what it is, the smoking gun. The letter that Michelle Gross just read to you from this nurse who was so disturbed by what she had seen, and how that got found was we were pushing for an investigation through Paul Schnell's office, and after Paul Schnell realized there was all these violations, and we pushed, my attorney and I said, well, this needs to be investigated, like the whole jail. People are dying, and their deaths are senseless. I'm going to call it what it is. They're being murdered in Beltrami County Jail, and nobody seems to care about it when you've got death after death. You know that there are 3 major lawsuits going on pending right now against MEnD and Beltrami County Jail. Just if in case y'all didn't know that. 3. That's a lot of lawsuits. I like the number 3 though. That's the number Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I love that number. So that means God gonna show up and show out. Watch what I tell you. But at any rate, he said no violations in his report. And now here we have a plethora of not just minor violations, but gross violations as well. And Paul said, we need to start this investigation after they told my attorney what he needed to do to get Attorney General Keith Ellison involved and write a letter to himself that Paul Schnell said that the investigation's already well underway. I said, well, praise the Lord. They didn't waste any time about it. And so Paul, I guess, decided to start within his office because of this conflicting information. What better place to start than right there at home, right? So I guess he went through files and in the complaint file. And that letter that Michelle wrote was in that drawer. But I spoke to the young lady because I was desperate to find out what was it that my son said before he died. Because we know that he died 2 days after she went to visit with him. And I wanted to just talk to her personally and ask her what he said. And she was so disturbed, as I said. She said that his death, he held his hand. She assured him she would get him help. He said to her, please don't leave me with these correctional officers. I'm afraid. Please don't leave me alone with these correctional officers. And he's like, can't defend himself. He's crying. He can barely speak. And as she's telling me this, she says, well, you're just finding this out now? I said, yeah, we got this in an investigation from the DOC. She said, oh my God, I wrote those letters back 3 days after Hardel died. In fact, I called Ramsey County Medical Examiner's office 3 days after Hardel's death and told them what happened, and then I wrote it up because is it not cardinal rule that nurses are supposed to document everything, Michelle?
Absolutely.
So she did an excellent job. She not only wrote the Ramsey County Medical Examiner's office this letter, she wrote the DOC this letter, which is where it was found, but she also, in turn, wrote the nurses board the same letter, and she wrote the medical board of physicians this same letter. But yet, only 2 of them have surfaced. Only 2 of these letters have surfaced. And so we're waiting to see where the other 2 are going to show up, because they're going to show up. And I'm going to tell you this, heads are going to roll, because as you heard my attorney say, the DOJ is now investigating this with the U.S. Attorney, as well as the FBI, the DOC, the BCA. Everybody's all over this story now. But here I was when my baby first died. I was knocking on every door I could knock on. I was calling everybody I knew to call. I kept praying, and kept praying, and kept believing that one day God, his hand would turn this around for me. And surely we are seeing a turnaround now, because what goes on in the dark shall come to light. And I thank God that I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. He's my God. He's my personal Savior. He is my everything. And if I didn't have him as my rock, I'd probably be in a mental facility. Because a lot of mothers say, it is nothing but the grace of God that allows me to stand to tell my story. Again, I thank everybody for showing up. I do have a poem that I would like to read. It is a poem that my son came to me 4 months after he died and spoke this to me. He woke me up at 3 a.m. And if you'd just be so kind to give me a few more moments of your time, I'd be very appreciative. Okay, hold on a minute. Thank you. Yep. Surely I had to type it up. And then after I read this poem, and I want to say that this poem should encourage every mother like myself who has lost a child or a loved one to please. And then after I read the poem, if you have any questions for me, feel free. But I would like for those that have come to stay a little while longer, because I want to protest right here in this area. I really appreciate your presence in that. It's an amazing work of art. I know there were many times that you stayed awake at night crying and praying for me to see the light and go in the right direction. But see, Mama, all those prayers you prayed provided me with many years of protection, because I should have been dead long, long ago when the devil tried to take me, but God stepped in and said no. So I thank the good Lord I had a praying mama, one who never gave up on me, but trust and believe through your prayers, Mama, I've been set free. I know it's hard to believe I'm gone, thinking back on when I was really, really young. God blessed us with a lot of good memories, just you and me. But you gotta hold on knowing that I've been set free. God knew my time was coming near, but during my last few days of life, I had no fear, because he was there with me, lending an ear and holding me dear. So please, Mama, please, don't you shed another tear. Now you go do what the Lord wants you to do, because God's got me and he's got you too. I ask that you ease your mind and let him take you places you never thought you'd see. So please, Mama, please, don't worry about me. I'm free from all hurt and all pain. Your prayers were never in vain, because the Lord came and got me and set me free. Now you go be who he created you to be, so that other sons' mamas would be set free. Thank you.
What do we want?
Justice!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
So what you're hearing and what you just heard is what we're talking about when we talk about institutional racism. MEnD is an institution that works with other government institutions, and they have practiced institutional racism that has resulted in death. And this is what has been going on in America for over 400 years, and this is why we're demanding full and complete reparations from Donald Trump and the American government. And we want Governor Tim Walz to close MEnD Correctional Facility and we want Beltrami County Jail to be not only closed, but we want the building to be knocked down. There was an inspection at Beltrami County Jail last summer that found that the building is it's only like 20 years old, but because of all the damage, it's like 200 years old. It has leaks. It has urinals, men urinals in the female part of the jail. There's walls that need to be knocked down. So instead of just knocking down one wall, they need to knock down the whole jail and start over. So we're gonna go walk around this space, hold this space for a couple more minutes. And again, we're real glad that you all came out and made it out here. If anybody has any questions for Delcia, though, ask them now, please.
A personal question, how is Hardel's babies? How is his kids?
Thank you for asking that, Nico. A lot of people tend to forget to ask about the babies, but I certainly do appreciate you asking. His firstborn, whose name is Kalia, struggles the worst. His lastborn is 4, so they're much younger. They don't quite understand 6-year-old and 4-year-old. They know their daddy died, but that's pretty much all they know. But the 8-year-old said to me when George Floyd was murdered, she said, "Grandma, how come you're not out there talking about my daddy? My daddy is not on the news like that guy. How come you're not telling them about my daddy and what happened?" 8-year-old, imagine that. And I looked at my baby and I said, "Honey, Grandma is out there. I am out there talking about your daddy. I talk about your daddy all the time. Grandma just doesn't get in the news all the time. But just because you don't see me on the news doesn't mean we're not talking about your daddy." She said to me, "I wish I could go and see my daddy in heaven." And I said, "No, baby, you can't go right now. You got to stay here and help Grandma. I need help. You got to stay here. You can't go and see your daddy right now." And it's questions like that that just tear me apart. I sometimes don't even have words for them. And I just keep praying and asking God to give me the words for them. A lot of times I don't even have anything to say. I just hug them and I tell them, "This is from your dad. This is a hug from your dad." But we keep them in prayer and we try to do things with them to keep their minds off of what's going on. We try to keep them away from the televisions, of course, so that they don't see a lot of what's been going on in the media. I know that they will eventually grow up one day and see all of the horrific videos, and I will just have to tell them that just like Emmett Till's mama had to make that decision to show what happened to her son and leave that casket open, I had to let the truth be known so that they could not hide what they had done to your father. I remember one day, and I'll just say this last piece, we went to the cemetery and we get there, and again, Kalia says, Grandma, back up, you're stepping on Daddy. Don't step on Daddy, Grandma." That was the first time she'd gone to a cemetery, and she was bawling her eyes out. And I just had to explain to her, "Yes, baby, his body is there, but he's in heaven. He's gone, he's in heaven. You can't hurt him. Nobody can hurt your daddy anymore. Nobody." And so those are the kinds of things that I have to say to encourage my babies. And we try to get them as involved in positive things and different activities to try to keep their minds off of things. But I know that they will eventually need medical, help. They will need because of depression and things of that nature. God knows I don't want to put that in the atmosphere, but it is a reality, because when they see the videos, when they grow up and see those videos, I know they'll be devastated. Any other questions? Thank you, Nico, for asking that. No other questions? All right, well, thank you again for you guys all coming out and shedding light on the truth, because that's what this is, the truth. And those of you who need to go can go, but we would like, if you could, stay with us for just a while we march down here and come back around because I want his neighbors to hear exactly what Dr. Leonard did. Thank you, you guys.
Can you guys just pull drinks over here just so people remember to keep yourself hydrated?
Yes, there's water. I'm sorry, there's water over here. Cold water in this cooler. Please help yourself.
Hello everybody, welcome. This is Nico from Unicorn Riot. We're here live in Sartell, Minnesota, outside of MEnD Correctional Care, where Hardel Sherrell's mother and family and supporters have gathered to demand... Yeah, I would love it. Is that a copy?
Yeah. Oh, hold on.
Well, you can send it to me later. Yeah. If you can scan it.
MEnD now!
MEnD now.
So MEnD is the correctional health care for correctional facilities and jails in Minnesota. 34 different counties they serve. MEnD is also implicated in a lawsuit brought by Shea Perry, who's chanting right now, and her lawyer, who's off to the right side in the suit.
Now.
What do we want?
They're suing
When do we want it?
Now.
a multitude of correctional officers from Beltrami County jailers, including the jail administrator, Calandra Allen. Hardel Sherrell, her son, was 27 when he died in Beltrami County after only 9 days being inside.
Get no peace. If we don't get no justice, they don't get no peace.
So again, we're in Sartell, Minnesota. People are demanding Minnesota end their contract with MEnD Correctional Care. And you heard a demand to...
Shut it down. If Hardel don't get it, shut it down.
There was also a demand to close Beltrami County Jail.
Don't get it, shut it down. If Hardel don't get it, shut it down. If Hardel don't get it, shut it down. If Hardel don't get it,
Shut it down.
what do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
Say his name.
Hardel Sherrell.
Hardel Sherrell. Say his name.
Hardel Sherrell.
Hardel Sherrell. Say his name.
Hardel Sherrell.
Tony May Jr. Say his name.
Tony May Jr.
Tony May Jr.
Tony May Jr. was also another victim of Beltrami County.
Say her name. Stephanie Bunker.
Stephanie Bunker also.
Stephanie Bunker.
She
Stephanie
allegedly
Bunker.
committed suicide inside Beltrami, and there's a lot of discrepancies around
Say her name.
her care
Stephanie
beforehand.
Bunker. Say
Her
his
family
name.
recently
Tony May.
has been making moves to get some justice for her as well.
Tony May.
Tony May again, she said. It was Tony May, Stephanie Bunker, and Hardel Sherrell in consecutive years, all dying in Beltrami County.
End MEnD now. End MEnD now. End MEnD now. End MEnD now. If Hardel don't get it,
Shut it down.
if Hardel don't get it,
Shut it
if
down.
Hardel don't get it, shut it down. If Hardel don't get it,
Shut it
if
down.
Hardel don't get it,
We're here on 19th
don't get
and Crutchton.
Men must come to an end. Men must come to an end. End MEnD now. End MEnD now.
And MEnD is the correctional care
End MEnD now.
for healthcare facilities, for correctional care contractor for correctional and jail facilities.
MEnD Medical must go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. MEnD Medical must go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. MEnD Medical has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. MEnD Medical has to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. MEnD Medical has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. MEnD Medical has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. MEnD Medical
Yeah, we're
has
up in
got to go.
Sartell,
Hey,
Minnesota,
hey.
very close to St. Cloud.
MEnD Medical has got to go. What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What
do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
If Hardel don't get it,
Shut it down.
if Hardel don't get it,
Shut it down.
if Hardel don't get it,
Shut it down.
Stephanie Butler don't get it,
Shut it down.
Stephanie don't get it,
Shut it down.
if Stephanie don't get it, shut it down. If Tony Jr. don't get it,
Shut it down.
Tony May don't get it,
Shut it down.
Tony May don't get it,
Shut it down.
if Hardel don't get it,
Shut it down.
if Hardel don't get it,
Shut it
if
down.
Hardel don't get it,
Shut it down.
See, Sartell, we had to come to Sartell to tell you what they did to Hardel.
That's
Do
right.
you hear what I tell you,
That's
Sartell?
right.
We had to come to Sartell because we wanted you to know the truth about what they did to Hardel. Sartell needs to know about Hardel. We are not hiding the truth. We are telling you all the truth. MEnD has only told you lies, and the Beltrami County Jail has told you lies. But no, we come with the truth. The truth, and that is what you're going to get, is the truth. So, Sartell, you're going to hear about Hardel. What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
If we don't get no justice, they don't get no peace. If we don't get no justice, they don't get no peace. No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
If we don't get it, shut it down. If Hardel don't get it, shut it down. If Hardel don't get it, shut it down. If Tony May don't get it, shut it down. In MEnD. 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 We have to defund MEnD. Let me tell you, I don't really like talking about politics because I just don't. I used to like to talk about politics when it was fun, but folks then took it to a whole nother level. They want to kill you now. So I'm just going to keep it short and sweet to the point. We need to tell everyone whose taxpayer dollars goes to pay the MEnD organization to keep running. It's time that you guys start asking some questions. We need to end MEnD. We need to defund MEnD. Defund MEnD now. Defund MEnD now.
Defund MEnD now. Defund MEnD now. Defund MEnD now. Defund MEnD now. Defund MEnD now.
Lives over profit.
That's right.
Lives over profit. We
Speak
know
on
what
that.
we're talking about
Speak
over
on
here.
that for a minute.
When he said, don't jump to conclusions, it's
Right.
written in the letter. Don't jump to conclusions because I don't want my company to be jeopardized.
That's right.
You don't want your company to be you don't want your company to be jeopardized.
Should have thought of that
What?
while you was killing Hardel.
Come on up here with me, Michelle.
Should have
What
been
you say?
thinking about it while you was killing Hardel.
Wait, what you say? We want to get that mic right over there.
jeopardizing
Michelle,
lives.
get that unicorn mic.
If
real
you
quick,
was
so we wanna
worried
hear
ab-
what you got to say.
If you was worried about your company, you should have been thinking about that when you were denying people medical care.
That's right.
That's what
right.
you should have been thinking about.
That's right.
Instead of trying to put yourself out as some kind of low-cost alternative and giving people crappy care and no care,
No care.
and
no
negligent care.
No care. Right.
ignoring people's suffering and pain.
Yes.
That's when you should have been thinking about what your company was up to.
That's right.
Not after you done killed some people.
Right.
And now your truth is coming out.
Exactly.
Because now you're done.
That's
Now
right.
you're done.
That's right.
Lives over profit.
That's
Lives
right.
over profit. Exactly.
That's right.
Trent, you want to talk about lives over profit for just a minute? You want to talk about that, bro?
When you say, oh, tell him he took a sock. He put a sock in his mouth and that's how he killed him, and we'll just say that. That's lives over profit. And that's part of the art of the cover-up. is to cover up. So you can continue to get profits. So you can continue to get blood money. So you can continue to eat while other people die. Yeah. That's what we're talking about lives over profit.
That's right.
And it has to stop in MEnD
That's
and
right.
in the prison facility.
That's right.
And in our local police departments where they put profits over lives. We want to put lives over profits.
That's right.
And it's going to start in the MEnD medical facility and
That's
close
right.
in Beltrami County Jail
That's right.
immediately.
That's
so
right.
we're calling on Governor Tim Walz, please right now, do everything you can to close MEnD Correctional Facility and to close and bulldoze Beltrami County Jail tonight.
Yes!
If Hardel don't get it,
Shut it down!
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 if Tony May don't get it,
Shut it down!
if Tony May don't get it,
Shut it down!
if Tony May don't get it,
What we heard a little earlier was specifics, details around Dr. Leonard, who Hardel's mother was calling him Dr. Liar. Dr. Leonard, I think, is the creator of, or the top of MEnD Correctional Care. Dr. Leonard is called out basically from this new letter that was found in an investigation into Hardel's death. The letter was written by a...
we're just out here to let you know that
I'll be quiet for a second.
is a murderer. MEnD is a murderous corporation that needs to have its contract pulled in all 34 counties in the state of Minnesota. MEnD Medical Facility is responsible for the death of Hardel Sherrell, Stephanie Bunker, Tony May, and many others. Close MEnD Medical Facility today. Revoke their contract. Revoke their licenses. They should not be allowed to do business in the state of Minnesota or in the United States of America. Healthcare is a right. Prisoners and inmates have a right to health care. Close MEnD Medical Facility now. No justice.
No peace!
No justice.
No peace!
No justice.
No peace!
No justice.
No peace!
This is a building where MEnD is. There's no doctors in the office right now because of COVID.
If Hardel don't get it.
Shut it down!
If Hardel don't get it.
Shut it down!
There's still a lot of
Black lives
businesses
don't
open
matter
around here.
Black lives, they matter here!
Black lives, they matter here.
Black lives, they matter here!
Black lives, they matter here.
Black lives, they matter here!
Native lives, they matter here.
Native lives, they matter here!
Native lives, they matter here.
Native lives, they matter here!
Native lives, they matter here.
Native lives, they matter here!
Native lives, they matter here.
Native lives, they matter here!
Native lives, they matter here.
Native lives, they matter here!
See, now what I want to just bring to your attention is this right here. A jail sentence, what? Is not a death sentence. That's right. Those folks went in there, they knew they committed the crime, they were ready to do their time. They needed to be left alone and given the respect and dignity, yep, I said it, respect and dignity of a human being who committed a crime, and they are there to pay their debt to society, not to be neglected, not to be abused, and definitely not to die. No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
If we don't get no justice, they don't get no peace. If we don't get no justice,
They don't get no peace!
if we don't get no justice,
They don't get no peace!
if we don't get no justice,
They don't get no peace!
no justice,
No peace!
no justice,
No peace!
no justice.
No peace!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want justice!
No peace!
No 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 justice!
No peace!
If Hardel don't get it,
Shut it
if
down!
Hardel don't get it,
Shut it
if
down!
Hardel don't get it,
Shut it down!
if Hardel don't get it,
Shut it down!
if Hardel don't get it,
Shut it
if
down!
Hardel don't get it,
Shut it down!
if Tony May don't get it,
Shut it down!
Tony May don't get it,
Shut it down!
Tony May don't get it,
Shut it down!
if Tony May don't get it,
Shut it down!
Tony May don't get it,
Shut it down!
Tony May don't get it,
Shut it down!
if Stephanie Bunker don't get it,
Shut it down!
Stephanie Bunker don't get it,
Shut it down!
Stephanie Bunker don't get it.
Shut it down!
Sartell, Hardel, we came to tell.
Hardel, Sartell, we came to tell. Sartell, Hardel, we came to tell. Sartell, Hardel, we came to tell. Sartell, Hardel.
Right here on the left is Donnie.
Sartell,
He's a godfather, grandfather of Brian Quinones, who was killed in September last year by police. Right here is Amity. She's the mother of Kobe Heisler. And here's a stepdad of Kobe Heisler.
I got my friend over here.
Kobe was
Tammy
killed.
And John. And I want her to
last
step
year.
up here for just a second.
Okay, we're about to hear a story.
And share a little bit about Kobe, her son. Because this ain't just about me and Hardel and Stephanie and Tony May. This is about all kinds of children that parents have lost at the hands of police and corrupt law enforcement. Here you go.
Hello, my name is Amity Dimmick. I am the mother of Kobe Heisler. I am one of the many hundreds of mothers who have lost loved ones to police violence and or jail room violence. Me and Miss D have been fighting together for quite a while now. My son was murdered on August 31st of 2019 in Brooklyn Center. He was a 21-year-old boy on the autism spectrum. He was a loving boy. He was having a bad day that day. He was going to hurt himself, so the grandparents whom he lived with called the police. He de-escalated almost instantly, which is normal. So they called 911 back and reversed the call, said my son was just fine. The Brooklyn Center Police Department made an executive decision, decided to come anyhow, and ultimately ended up shooting my son multiple times, including in the head right in front of his grandmother. They then let him lay on the floor for so long that he couldn't even donate his organs. Our case is currently open. The BCA concluded their investigation in November of 2019. Sitting on Hennepin County District Attorney Mike Freeman's desk since then. He's already charged George Floyd's death. May he rest in peace, but I guess the only way you get a conviction is with some Facebook Live videos. They won't give us the videos to show you guys, so you can't see what happened to my son.
Release the tapes.
Release the tapes
Now.
now. I guarantee if I don't get them by his 1-year anniversary, I will force it.
When did it happen?
August 31st, 2019. It's been
Time to
10
release.
months and 15 days.
Yep, it's time to release them.
Still to this day, I never got a call back from the Brooklyn County Police Department verifying that they did indeed kill my son. We are working together. We've been working together and, on numerous police reform bills, including a Kobe's Law, written by this man right here, that will require body cam videos to be given to next of kin within 48 hours. That is one of the many bills that we have been fighting for to pass. And all of it, before, the folks are, defund the police, so scared, what do you don't want the police? No, that ain't what we're talking about. You should take time and go to Communities United Against Police Brutality and check out the 44 recommendations that we are trying to pass.
right.
They not only help to get us justice, but they help to keep everybody safe.
That's right.
The community,
Generations to come.
the police officers. Why we got police officers expecting them to do 5 different jobs?
Yes.
They're supposed to be police officers,
Right.
not mental health professionals, not social workers. If that's what we want them to be, then let's train them to do that.
Right.
I heard a stat the other day that 95% of police interactions are on social or mental health issues. Only 5% of them are in response to violent situations. So why do we have them all coming to every situation, guns drawn?
Right.
And can I tell you something? I've forgotten to bring this up the last few times I've spoken, but I think that the situation with mental health and or autism response in police officers is so bad that on August 27th of 2019, so 4 days before my son was murdered, I sat at a board meeting that I sit on a board at a mental health facility up north, and I told them that I was afraid that the police are so scared to do their jobs these days that they're all trigger happy now, and that they come in and they essentially just shoot and hope that somebody's alive so they can ask questions later.
Easily started.
Yes, they're just scared, and I said I was afraid that I was going to get a call saying that my son had been murdered by police. Well, folks, I actually got that call 4 days later. 4 days later, I got that call. It's so bad that I actually predicted, just like many other parents who have people who are suffering from depression or mental health issues or autism or addiction or anything, that you can be pretty much assured that they could get hurt if you call the police. And in fact, on Sunday after the Mother's March, we ran into an interaction where we saw 3 young boys on something. We didn't know what they were on. I've never seen anything like it. And here you will have a bunch of mothers who have lost their loved ones by calling the police for help. And we just didn't want to be the people to do that to those kids. I actually thought they'd be safer wandering around, drugged out of their brains on I don't know what, but that their chances of living would be better than if we were to call the police for assistance. So when they took just like her, when you take one of our loved ones, you leave us with nothing else to do. As a mother, the only thing I have left to do for my son is to fight for justice. That's all I can do. I don't want to be doing this.
Right. Yeah.
But it's all I can do.
Yeah. Pray and fight.
I can't plan a birthday party for him. I can't watch him graduate from college. I can't have him make me a meal with all the chef skills he learned. He can't make me any more hybrid flowers. He can't be so silly. He got so tall that one of his favorite things to do was pick me and my daughter up like we were little sacks of potatoes. And I can't tell you how many pictures, when I was looking through pictures to put in his memorial service, how many pictures there are of him just picking my daughter up. And both of them have the biggest smiles on their face. So it's me and Miss D here, Jonathan, everybody, Nico, everybody who comes out with us, the people that support us, all the protesters, all the activists. But most importantly, what we have found is that uniting as families.
That's right. That's right.
Uniting the families, staying united, having a united message.
Yes.
Because when we're out here one by one trying to do it on our own, for our own loved one, it's not getting anywhere. You guys don't know my son's story. It was on the news for 2 days. And then they've done nothing with it. How can a person get justice with that?
Right.
Because what do they say? Well, silence, no, but what do they say? No action is...
I don't know, but we're going to get some now.
Well, if they don't do anything for me, then it's injustice, whatever that saying is.
Right.
Delay, yes, justice delayed is justice denied.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when they do things like this, they also run out our time on statutes of limitation.
Yep.
So one of the things that we are also fighting for is removing the statute, well, extending or removing. Of course, we just want the full removal of the statute of limitations. But I really do please ask you all to go look at Communities United Against Police Brutality and see the logical, comprehensive, feasible police reform packages that we are out here every day pushing for, because you know what, everybody? Me and Miss D, we don't want you to feel the need to stand up here and do the same for your loved one.
That's right.
And I don't think people realize how easy it is that it could actually be you.
That's right.
It could be anybody.
That's
That's how out of control it is. So
Yeah.
that's what I thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad for you.
We're gonna get them. We're gonna get them. Yes.
Stand together. How do we stand?
I'd like to have Jonathan McGlinnan, if you don't mind. I'm putting him on the spot, so he has no idea what I'm about to ask him. But because Jonathan is a law student and has many degrees, he's very bright, knows his stuff. He's been standing with a lot of us mothers, excuse me, in the different organizations. Justice Squad with Ashley Quinones, and of course, yes, exactly, families supporting families against police brutality with Tashir Garraway and Solmanad. I mean, there's just so many different organizations. Michelle's communities against police brutality. There's just so many, but I just wanted him to just kind of share with you all kind of what he has seen since he's been kind of walking with us mothers, and just even when I showed you the letter that you saw with the news with Hardel, what your reaction was. So however you want to answer that, yeah, feel free.
That's a loaded question.
I know it's a loaded question. Just however you can, your experience in walking with us mothers, and then what your feelings were when you read Hardel's letter.
I think the first thing is the pain is palpable. You can see you listen to the stories.
Love you.
You see the families.
Thank you so much.
And
yes, more power to people.
It brings you to a place where you can say, how do we live in a society that allows something like this to happen? This is the 21st century. This ain't 400 years ago. And when it comes to the police, it seems like the rest of the world has evolved, but the police departments have just got more technologically advanced. And we need change. We definitely need change, and the only way that we're going to get change is by coming out here to these streets, changing these laws, and holding people accountable. This is what I believe that needs to happen. The letter that I read, I thought it was disgusting. I thought it was disgusting, and MEnD needs to be held to account. People should be in jail behind what they allowed to have happen.
Yes.
That's the kind of accountability that we need. We need politicians to be right here along with us, standing, asking for change, and making things happen. Use your power for the people, not to uphold the institution.
Well said.
Or your next election.
Right.
Well said.
So.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I appreciate you, just sharing that. And again, I just want to say thank you to everybody that came out to support us. Thank you, Beverly. But I also want to just make mention that now that we know this has been a huge cover-up, let me take this mat because I want everybody to hear this real good. Ramsey County Medical Examiner's Office, we're coming back. We went there the first time, and we thought we had a reliable media coverage. We didn't, because the story never came out. But what the Lord had told me was, if Beltrami County Jail didn't come clean and didn't come forth with the truth in 7 days, that they would later be exposed. Well, guess what? They chose not to tell the truth, and now they're being exposed. And so they had the information all along, and we paid for an independent autopsy investigation to be done, and they didn't send that along. And if they would have sent that along, we then would have had Hardel's body shipped there, because we were going off of she was going off of tissue sample, blood sample, the things that they take in a autopsy.
Right.
We weren't thinking about having his body, shipped, but now
And that costs money.
It does.
People are poor. So you're asking poor families to go get an independent autopsy, which they have to pay for, when you should just do your job in the first place. And this is what we're saying in Minnesota and across the United States. It's expensive to be poor. and it's deadly. So when you're poor, you're at risk of death, and then for mothers to have to spend their own money to go do an autopsy that should have been done right in the first place is unacceptable.
Yes.
And Ramsey County Coroner's Office will be held accountable.
Yeah. Thank you, Traren. Thank you, Traren. So, for those of you who are watching on Unicorn Riot, I ask, that you guys connect with Traren. He's going to help me to get the next rally going. We're kind of thinking July 29th. We're not quite sure yet, but we definitely need to go over there and apply a lot of pressure. Because the next thing I'm going to ask is that they also be investigated. We may not be able to bring criminal charges against them or sue them, and that's okay, but we want to make sure that what happened to Hardel never happens to another family.
That's right.
They needed to send all of that information over there so that they would have all the cards on the table to know exactly what needed to happen next. And we didn't get that. So we are definitely going over to Ramsey County Medical Examiner's Office probably the next 2 weeks to apply a lot of pressure and ask them some questions as to why they said nothing about the letters they received.
And just to follow up on that, for all you people who have been in the street and who have been protested, we appreciate when, whether it's the governor, whether it's the attorney general, whether it's Commissioner Schnell, but we know if we don't apply pressure, if pressure wasn't being applied, if she didn't go to Schnell's office, this wouldn't be happening. If we didn't get out in the streets and practice civil unrest, charges wouldn't have been brought in the George Floyd's case. So we're going to still continue to get out here and demand justice in the streets and keep the pressure on law enforcement and politicians in the state of Minnesota and throughout the United States of America.
I want to piggyback on what he said. We just met with one of our highest ranking officials in Minnesota yesterday, and one of the examples that he put as a metaphor was that he can be the boat, but without any wind.
Right,
the boat's just going to sit there.
Right.
All of us, all of you out there, we're the wind.
Yep, that needs to push that boat.
That's pushing the boat.
Yep.
They can't do anything without us.
Yeah, it goes hand in hand. Yeah, we need to work together.
We can't let the climate change. We gotta keep pressure on. We gotta keep the wind blowing.
Gotta keep the pressure on.
Gotta keep the wind blowing.
That's right. Amen. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I took what he said to heart, man. I'm all like, you know what?
Right.
I believe you.
Yeah.
And we'll continue.
And I just want to say that George Floyd's family, my heart goes out to you all. And if we could just take a moment of silence for George Floyd's family, because he was the sacrificial lamb that allowed all of our voices to be heard today, and for all of us to be able to move forward and get the attention of the elected officials for them to actually act and do what was right. So if we could just take a moment of silence for the George Floyd family, that'd be great. Say his name.
George Floyd.
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 If Hardel don't get it,
shut it down.
If Hardel don't get it,
shut it down.
If Hardel don't get it,
shut it down.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys all for showing up.
Thank you very much.
Hey, can I ask you a couple questions?
Absolutely.
Traren too, and lawyer, if possible.
Yes, Zorsop. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And you too, maybe Jonathan. If I can, just I wanted to ask all four of you all, who all the players were in the cover-up. It seems like it's layered, right? You got the COs, you have the jail administrator, then you have Sanford Health, then you have MEnD. Can you talk about like all the players involved?
Well, the incident happened at Beltrami County Jail. That's where it started, and it's interesting to know that initially that there was a news report about Hardel, and the news report said that Hardel had collapsed. And if you look at the video, he had collapsed. Right, it presented it as if they came in and he like collapsed right there, and then he just lost consciousness. And what the video shows is that he had collapsed, well, several times, but the last time he collapsed was when they dropped him off on the bed, and he fell out because he couldn't move anymore, and they just left him there all night for hours. So he had collapsed hours before he died, and then there's been lots of interaction after that. And so when we saw that, that was very concerning right away, and it raised a lot of questions. But the Ramsey County Medical Examiner's Office had this information from the very beginning, this letter that was read today. And what we want to know is where has it been? What have they done with it? This is an agency that is obligated to conduct death investigations for people who die in custody, police custody, custody of jails, other state facilities. And so when you get that kind of information, how do you just not mention it? How do you just ignore that? If the doctor wanted to not use that information in terms of how he conducted the autopsy and determining the cause of death, that's one thing. But if you're investigating a death to see whether there was any foul play, because that's one part of why these cases are sent for autopsies, then in our view, there was an obligation to come forward with that information and at least mention that, hey, we got this report, we read it, and here's our opinion. There was no mention of it anywhere. And it was never given to us by the Ramsey County Medical Examiner's Office either. And then we've learned that there have been complaints filed with the nursing board and possibly the Board of Medical Practice. And again, this goes back to September of 2018. We're coming up in 2 years. And so our question is, what has happened since then until now? Has there been investigation? Has anyone come in to do anything? Does anyone care? These are government agencies. This isn't like some kind of a private oversight commission. These are government agencies that are put in place to make sure that people who don't have a voice don't die in facilities like jails and other institutions. So they had an obligation to come forward and an obligation to investigate and an obligation to make the public aware of these issues. And as far as we know, nothing has happened. And so we have a lot of questions. What happened at the Department of Corrections before Paul Schnell took over with the shady investigation they did, the way that this report from this nurse was hidden, even within the Department of Corrections. How did this report go missing for almost 2 years when the Department of Corrections was supposed to do a death investigation into Hardel's case? I don't know whether this is an intentional cover-up. I don't know whether people are talking to try to cover things up. I hope not, and I'm guessing probably not, but this is an example of how the system just feeds itself. You have multiple state agencies, despite the fact that they probably don't know each other, they're working with each other to cover this up. And the public should know these things. And the public should be asking questions, and they should be given answers because they're supposed to be out there to protect us. And we haven't seen any of that happening since Hardel died.
That's right. Also, the sheriff Hardel is responsible. He recently retired, but I think the initial investigation was done by Beltrami.
Under his jurisdiction.
Right, so the initial investigation was done by the city of Bemidji. Bemidji is in Beltrami County. This is the one major city in Beltrami County. And so one thing we've been pushing for is to require some sort of a neutral agency to come in and investigate these death cases that happen in jail so that Beltrami County doesn't just call Bemidji, which I think is possibly in the same building even, and say, hey, come over and investigate this death that happened here. There has to be an independent agency that has no connection to anyone involved to come in and look at these cases. And this is something that we've been pushing for as well, and I'm hopeful that we can get some kind of change here.
So like he was saying, so that's Beltrami County Jail, Now that's Sheriff Hobdab and is that Beltrami County. Then you have Ramsey County. Then you have other agencies. So it's, and this is what we mean by when people talk about white supremacy and institutional racism, this is an example of how institutions work together to cover up the murder and torture of black lives and Native lives. And this has been happening. This is what we call it, the art of the cover-up. This is an art. This is something that they have been doing historically for, like I said, 400 years. But even if you go back to like the Rodney King case or other cases here from Jamar Clark or Tony May or others.
Yeah, Philando Castile.
I think there's still more video.
Yeah,
I don't know if all the video has been released in Hardel's case. Right. And so what's on, we want to know where are those videos, what's on them, right, and things like that, so that we can get down to the truth. So even what company are they going through to have the video? They're part of the cover-up.
Right.
So there's a lot of different organizations and companies and entities who are making money. And that's why we go back to lives over profit, because they're trying to save their, like Dr. Death said, MEnD's involved. That's the care company. So they're trying to save their profits, and we're trying to save lives. That's right.
Yeah, can you talk real quick a little bit more on the Ramsey County? Just basically the medical examiner, it's not like they have a super clean pass from what I'm understanding. Can you just talk about a little bit more of that?
So this is like, again, this is why I like these kind of attorneys, because they're thorough and he's not, we had to drag him out here. He doesn't want to be on the camera talking and stuff, but because he likes to do the work. And not disrespect to anybody else who does that, but just, he's a good example. Ramsey County Medical, so this deals, Ramsey County Medical Examiner this was shifted to them, so they're part of the cover-up. But then imagine what this is doing is unearthing something else. So this is they're dealing with this as far as jails, but then what about the shootings? Any police-related shooting that has resulted in death, or dog bites, or just anything when somebody gets kicked in the face or just unjustly done. Ramsey County Medical Examiner steps in. So if they did this with their case, imagine what they've been doing for the last 10, 20, 30 years when it comes to these types of incidents. And that's why we want a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and we want an independent investigation into any police-related shooting or death that has resulted in, or death by law enforcement, which might have happened in a jail or prison, such as Beltrami or Stillwater. We need an independent investigation, and they need to be able to go in the Ramsey County Examiner's office and get the documents going back at least 20 years.
Del Shea went to Ramsey County. You went to a commissioner, didn't you? And they told you, oh, this is not our agency. This is somewhere else, so we're not involved.
They lied.
Well, what do you know? And the other question should be asked is, why didn't Bemidji interview this MEnD employee? They were conducting what was supposed to be a criminal death investigation. The Ramsey County Medical Examiner is doing an autopsy on the cause of death, but the city Bemidji Police was supposed to be doing a criminal investigation.
Right.
And so how did this happen that that investigation never led them to this MEnD employee who had all this information to share? Because it was covered up. That's how.
Exactly.
And Jonathan wanted to just make it. I mentioned about something real quick.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why we want all the cases to be open and re-looked at and investigated by an independent agency, because if they've done it once, if they've done it twice, then they've done it a third or fourth time. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, there's a duck there, and we need that accountability. The system, we have to have a system that's built off integrity, and we don't have that right now. So we need to open up the cases.
I heard what you were talking about with the bill with Amity, with the 48 hours of releasing body camera footage. That's a step forward with a bill that could be pushing for some accountability. What about in jails? Is there any kind of bill or legislation that you have thoughts of? Yeah, go ahead.
I can talk on that. Not to cut you off, but if you want to add to what I've got, because I've been speaking with Paul Schnell personally, and he's coming out. They're going to come out with what's called duty of care bill. but it will not be introduced until January because of everything. They need to push all these other police reform bills through first, and once they get everybody on the same page, House, Senate, Governor, then we can move forward with the duty of care bill. And I get to be very involved in that. And in fact, the governor has said to me that we want you to go and share your story of what happened to your son in front of the legislation in January. And not only that, but they are going to take my input into the duty of care bill. And basically, they should have the duty to care for someone who has fallen sick. And one of the things that I definitely want to have in there is that they should be required to wear body cams, because now you got audio and you got visual. Visual is one thing, but when you hear what they're saying, I can just about imagine what they were saying with Hardel when he fell out of the SUV and the Sally Port and everywhere else. So that's very incriminating. So, but then that also holds them to a higher level of accountability. Not only that, but I would also like to add in that bill, and I've told this to Paul Schnell, is that they would have an intake. When they do the intake form, that there would be something there where the person could check off having what's called a mental health provider or a, what do they call that? Power of attorney, thank you. Where if they've fallen sick, they cannot speak for themselves. If they make a phone call to a family member and they're asking for help, that triggers that power of attorney to step in. And now they don't even have, so then when you call the jail, you don't have to hear the nurse say what they said to me. I didn't know my son was dying. I thought he had a back problem. I got a back problem and it's very serious, but I ain't dying. And they said, oh, we can't tell you anything due to HIPAA laws. To heck with a HIPAA law. So this person would just have HIPAA be null and void when that person steps in. That's what duty of care we want to be involved in that bill. And what they also said is that whoever's the author of that bill, that they're going to name it after Hardel Sherrell. So praise the Lord for that. That's what we're going to be working on come January. Yeah. So thank you again, Nico, for covering the story.
I also want to say that the legislature just appropriated funding for a new ombudsperson, but we also need more. The ombudsperson's office needs more power. When they see these types of events, when they see these horrific events, they need to be able to shut these places down. They need to be able to investigate, and they need to be able to do their job. So they need the freedom to be able to do that through the governor's office.
It's like going in for a food inspection.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely.
Doesn't mean it ends.
So there you have it. MEnD Correctional Cares Less. That's what Mama said. That's Beverly. I had to take that one. Oh, she summed that up. MEnD Correctional Cares Less. 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 That's why we want to mend. We want to end MEnD. End MEnD now. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, let's get at Dr. Leonard too. If we'll do some research on some things about Dr. Leonard.
Amen.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking some time and talking.
Thanks for following the story. I know you've been kind of following along.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm Nico. Good to meet you.
I must have missed that memo.
Well, we were talking about it before.
Real quick.
But you know what? When I have
Amity, do you have a moment?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to talk right now, or do you want to say bye, or whatever you're going to say? I'm going to speak to Amity about Kobe for a second. Again, we're here live in Sartell, Minnesota, next to St. Cloud, Minnesota. MEnD Correctional Care has been implicated as a reason, as one of the reasons Hardel Sherrell died. Hardel Sherrell died when he was 27 years old inside of Beltrami County Jail in 2018. September 2nd, I believe, was his death date. He had only been 9 days inside. He died from Guillain-Barré syndrome, and his family is calling for MEnD to be, the contract with MEnD from the Minnesota state to be ended. MEnD provides health care for correctional facilities and jails, and they're calling for MEnD to have its contracts done. Chair? Yep. Yeah, we can go in the grass. Do you have a chair? Otherwise, we can go in the grass or in the car. Like, you could sit in the car.
Whatever you want some AC?
Oh, hey, it's whatever. It's whatever's more comfortable for you, really. I don't want you to feel. Like, yeah, you could sit like right there. Does that work for you?
Actually, you know what? If I can just lean, I'll be good.
All right, cool. You want to hold this?
Sure.
Sweet. I left my hand sanitizer in the car.
I'll risk it. Do I have to talk close to it?
No, you're fine right there. I can hear you. Yeah, so you talked about your son. The audience heard a little bit about it, but can you give us a brief recap, and then I have some more questions about it.
All right, yes. My son, Kobe Heisler, he was 21 years old and on the autism spectrum. He was having a bad day that day. Actually won't name the fast food joint that messed up his food order, but that's what the argument with his grandparents started over, and the grandfather just left him at the Wendy's, which was like 6 blocks away. Came back and he was mad, and then he decided to start threatening to hurt himself, which was one of the things that, you know, he would do. He didn't voluntary hold, which he was not happy with. Since then, he had been out doing day programs, really enjoying those, doing art programs and stuff like that, and on his medication and everything. I hear perhaps maybe some issue happened with his medication. I'm not even sure, so I can't even speak to that. So the grandfather who he lived with the grandmother and grandfather, because my son was threatening to hurt himself with some weapons. They called the police out of concern for him. And he almost instantly de-escalated, which, as people who have people with mental health issues or autism or any sorts of these things know, there can be an escalation, but then a quick de-escalation, so that was kind of normal. And so he had de-escalated, so the grandfather called 911 back, the Brooklyn Center Police Department back, and said, you know, Kobe's fine. We don't need your assistance anymore. Well, as I said, they made it an executive decision to come. Anyhow, I assume because a weapon was mentioned, but as I say, that weapon would have been used. They are more likely to hurt themselves. And so they called like I said, they reversed the call. They came anyhow. They actually had a conversation with my son for a good 12 minutes, had patted him down. It was summertime, he didn't have much clothes on. He certainly, no, because if I go into the ambulance, you're going to take me onto and my poor son, you know, if you take me out there, they're going to bring me to the hospital and they're not going to let me go. How many bullet holes he has in his body? Because they haven't told me. And the only reason I know that he has a bullet in his head is because he only took care of people and loved the beauty of things and creating things. Does it turn? He had started crocheting a blanket for his cousin that his dad found after he had passed away, and I finished that for him. For my daughter, when she was into Minecraft, he made her a Minecraft storage box. When she was into anime, he made her a life-size doll of her favorite character with accessories and everything, like little earphones, a little microphone on it, just everything. He was so caring and so creative. So him and his dad were always a part of that, always had fun rickshaw bikes and taking care of his grandma and grandpa who weren't in good health. The grandma is not very mobile at all. And when I had asked him, well, why don't you come live up north with us? He said, well, you know, I will, Mom. I said, but I got to take care of grandma and grandpa first. Like he was a caretaker. He had gone to school, gone to college to be a chef. He was just an amazing kid. And they literally, I mean, the way I see it now is that the police at this point have decided that they are judge, jury, and executioner. How dare they come to a house when somebody's in crisis, threatening to hurt themselves, actually have the call reversed and still think it's appropriate for the outcome to be my son laying dead in his own home. And then to be left for so long that he can't even donate an organ. Do you know that's important to some people? All of his stuff was good except for his heart. He already had heart surgery at 10 and a half months. I thought I went through all the tragedy and trauma I was going to have to, and the fear I was going to have to deal with my son. But as I said, that it was 4 days before my son was murdered that I said out loud that I was afraid I would get a call, because I have been in fear. I have been working on mental health boards, reading the newspaper. As we've said, me and Ms. D, we've been working together with the other families of police violence, and I don't know what the percentage is, but at least 30 to 40% of the families that we're dealing with, their deaths were due to wellness checks and mental health crisis situations. And my mind was blown when we were talking to Mr. Ellison the other day, and he said that 95% of police calls are for social or, mental health situations. It's only 5% of police calls are for actual crime, violent criminal events. So I guess I'm confused as to why our police force are armed to the hilt, come into situations with guns drawn before they even know what's going on, and as I see it, shoot first, hope somebody's alive, to ask questions later. And if that isn't bad enough, that we as a community and people who are supposed to hold our elected officials accountable have let this continue on. In Minnesota alone, there are over 400 police murders. We say a lot of Black Lives Matter, but we're fighting for everybody's lives. It's white, it's black, it's native, it's Hmong. It's that the police are completely out of control. And my understanding is they're also, apparently, because when we bring up these stories, a lot of people say, well, why don't they just shoot him in the knee? Why don't they? Well, what I found out is apparently, and I haven't verified this, but apparently our police officers are trained to kill. And I'm not even sure if ordinary citizens know that. I did not know that. I expect that my police officers are trained to protect and serve. I expect maybe perhaps my military to be more heavily trained and more combative, but certainly not the people that are supposed to protect and serve our communities, the communities that they should be living in. And one of the things that I think about when people get all scared when we're talking about this police reform, or they actually think we're just trying to make them all go away or whatever, but I think about the states in Europe, like I know Finland, their police officers don't carry weapons. And Kobe's godfather actually lives in Finland, and he let me know that, I don't know what the time frame was, it would have been a 10 or 20 year time frame. There were only 3 police murders. Not that they don't have weapons, but they're going to go call somebody in, but they're going to come and address every situation unarmed in the first place. And then if you're familiar with Camden, New Jersey, I haven't been able to do enough research, but I hear that Camden, New Jersey kind of has already done a lot of the things that we're trying to push, and guess what? It's working out just fine. And the number of deaths, at least in the article, exponentially dropped. And it wasn't just police deaths, it was violent encounters of any kind. So to say that it can't be done is certainly not true. The only reason why we are not able to get it done right here and right now, even though everybody's watching and we should be the state taking the lead on this, is because we got apparently a Democratic governor and a Republican-held Senate. Is that right? Whatever it is. Politics. Politics are killing the people in our community. And after George Floyd's death, it just clearly seems to have created this opening for not just us, for the nation, to make a difference. In my whole life, I'm 46. I don't recall another time when I felt like there was even an opening for us to have the possibility to make a change. And I feel like George Floyd as she said, the archangel, the sacrificial angel, lamb, whatever. You know, that's, his death isn't in vain. It has brought all of this on. And even though we're pushing for specific police reform, if you've just seen the amount of things that have already changed from all the protesting and the coverage and everything, it works. It's working. Because of us going out, her coming out and meeting with the right people and not letting up. And as we said before, we shouldn't have to fight for what's right. Unfortunately, that is the climate that we're in. And so I'm out here supporting her. She's out here supporting me. We're out here supporting all the other families. But I do it because I do not want one single family more to go through what we've gone through. You know, I got my son in an urn in my kitchen on a table. And that's not right. It broke everybody, you know. It broke his dad. It broke the family. I mean, we're still united, but we're broken, you know. And it's very challenging when you're in situations like this. It's a challenge to even, say, find attorneys that are going to represent you. Some of these cases are so challenging, even though they can be won. Well, if the lawyer doesn't win it in the end, it could bankrupt them. And we've got lots that we need to handle. Because I don't have confidence in our system, I at first thought, oh, there's no possible way they couldn't see this as a justified shooting. But 10.5 months later and nothing? What are they doing? Like, are they trying to make a story up that fits their narrative? I don't understand. But what I do know is that it shouldn't be 10.5 months and that I have nothing. And the only thing that the family has gotten is the ability to view body cam videos, which happened about 2 weeks ago. And the only reason that happened was because George Floyd died. And I'm pretty positive that Mayor Mike Elliott did not want what was happening in Minneapolis to happen in Brooklyn Center. He saw that we came out protesting the next day along with everybody else and haven't stopped since. So I am grateful for whatever his reason, him and Officer Gannon, whatever their reason was for actually showing the family the video, because that's not the way it normally happens. You usually see the video right at the Hennepin County Attorney's Office and right before, you know, they announce their charging decision and then upload everything to their site. So this was a little bit of an abnormality. Now that I've seen the video, and new counsel is telling me I talk too much and that I can't get into specifics about what I saw in the video, but I have lots to say about what I saw in the video. But one thing that I can tell you is that watching the video only confirmed what I already knew, which was that my son is a nonviolent man till the end, that my son did not deserve what happened, and that my son was, in fact, murdered by the Brooklyn Center police. I have no questions about that. And just like the rest of the families, I've got nothing left. I have nothing left to do for my son but fight for his justice. That's all they left me with. So if they're getting sick of hearing us or seeing us or any of that, too fucking bad. You did this to us. The only thing I can do to my son to show him that I love him still to this day, I can't hug him, can't plan his wedding, can't go to his graduation, I can't hang out with him, I can't take him fishing, can't see him and his little sister together, him and his little cousin, none of that stuff. All I got left is to fight for justice and make sure his death wasn't in vain. That at the very least, something good comes out of it. A law changed, a life saved, anything. But the one thing I won't allow them to do is to have killed my son and then nothing. They don't get that. They don't get just to do that and nothing. And so I'll do what I need to do to make sure that his name is known. And thankfully I have such an amazing group of people who support us. You, Jonathan, Jonathan, I didn't ask him to write Kobe's bill, Kobe's law. He did. He just did. He did because it's important. You know, I actually testified in front of the legislature on my son's case, and I don't even know what I'm talking about because they won't tell me what happened. And I just invite anybody, even just for a minute, especially the politicians and the people that have power and all the protesters in the community, because we have power too in numbers. But just imagine, you know, for a minute, not only having lost your child, your beautiful child, in such a horrific, horrible, and ugly manner, but then to not even know how to fight for justice for her because they won't even tell you what happened. It's 10.5 months, and I'm not, you know, I'm an accountant. I don't know the law. I don't even know if they have a right to do what they're doing, you know. But goddamn, if you can't find a lawyer who's got the time or the willingness to, hopefully I got somebody good lined up. I don't know if I should say who yet, but we might even know who it is. So hopefully that'll come to fruition. But you know, just out here every day trying to fight for my son.
Thank you for sharing all that. I have to go in a moment, but can I ask you a question real quick? Talking about Kobe's bill as like maybe a way forward, what about also just in general the 95% of people who are police calls that are for mental or social emergencies? What is your ideas dealing with the son who had autism, on the autism spectrum, of how police should encounter, or how our country, how our state or cities in our state should deal with folks having mental crisis or mental illness? Should they call the police? If so, I heard you say they should be trained a little better, but should they also not call the police? If they don't call the police, what are some viable options?
Well, you know, I know that. Thank you, doll. I know that there are some, like, I know up in my community, I don't want to necessarily, up north, you know, we have mobile crisis units. So I know for sure, and we are working directly with the police to try to make it better. So I know for sure that there are pockets of places trying to make difference. I know through Noah McCourt, I met St. Paul Police Officer Rob Zink, who created and teaches the CARE program, which is the Cops Autistic Response Education Training. I actually met with him, and he told me what the training was, and it's quite amazing. First off, he teaches the same thing to the police as he teaches to the parents. There's no difference in what he teaches. One of the important things that he mentioned is the parents need to know what the police are doing when they are coming and dealing with a kid with autism, because it might not, it doesn't always look pretty, but it results in no loss of life. And so one of the things I would hope to do is he had even thought of things I hadn't even thought of, and the reason why he does know what he's talking about is because he is the father of 2 autistic boys. I would love to see his training get spread all over the nation. The other thing is, we met with Attorney General Keith Ellison yesterday, and I don't even know if I should say that, but he gave me a good idea, you know. He told me that the Minneapolis Police Department budget is like $193 million. And as we know, and especially the Black Lives Matter gentleman over there, you know, we know that a lot of the problems that put some of these gentlemen into some of these people into these situations is systemic racism, generational poverty, stuff like that. So, you know, homelessness, drug addiction. Why don't we take, you know, 20 million of that 193 million, put it towards housing? Why not take another 20 million? And because I you know, statistics, man, I start thinking about those numbers. 95% social and mental health responses. Why is our police force comprised of violent, or, you know, people that are trained in the sort of response that they're trained in? Why is our police force not actually made up of mental health professionals? Retrain them. Make them go to school. What is it, 4 years, 6 years, whatever? Do whatever. And so that was just yesterday, but I can't get it out of my head. Kind of looking at that full restructure, 5%. response to violent crimes. That right there, like, I just can't get past that. And so as of yesterday afternoon, I've tried to figure out what I want to. I'm actually going to call him back and be like, dude, I can't get that out of my brain. Like that, I think you're onto something. You know, and I think, you know, and I know that we know a lot of people get afraid when they hear the word defund the police. What they're thinking about is disband the police. Nobody I know is actually saying that. Some people are. But, you know, we're talking about taking some of the funds that go to them and put it towards the more appropriate professionals for the response. And leave them for what they're trained to do. Deal with criminal, violent interactions. And leave it at that. And I just can't get that out of my head. I know that one of the bills that we're trying to pass talks about a co-responder bill, and even though I speak on behalf of that bill, I always point out at the end that I am actually in support of 100% zero police in mental health response, unless we restructured the police where some of the police are actually just mental health responders. And I am going to do a lot more research on the countries and the few cities in our nation that have actually pulled off what it is we're trying to do. Because you can't argue, well, they can't argue with facts. But I'm going to keep on hitting them with facts. Like I say, just like some of these other folks, I'm not giving up. At this point, I literally have nothing better to do. Well, I have a daughter, but my brother's taking care of her. I do have something, you know. But besides that, otherwise, trying to keep my job, which isn't working, you know, I'm supposed to be at work right now. So this is more important. We'll figure it out.
Where can people find more information about Kobe or how to support you?
I am on Facebook, Amity Dimmock, AMITY DIMOCK. I did just start a YouTube channel yesterday. I have to go figure out how to use it, but it would be #Justice for Kobe Heisler, and then my name is after that. And so far, I think that's working. I also just started Instagram, once again under my name and #Justice for Kobe. On my page, we do have a GoFundMe because this is killer on us trying to, like I said, I think maybe I've worked 6 hours this week. And obviously, if I'm 3 days in, I haven't even made it a full day yet. So it's been a challenge, but we use that to continue coming and going and doing what we need to do. But I do hope that my YouTube page, I just keep on trying to figure out what's the best way to get it out there, you know? Because even though we're starting to get some momentum from our families, it's still the big names that get it's still the Clark and the Brooks and the Floyd, and that's fine. They deserve it also. But it's really hard to get our name in with them. It's the names that people are familiar with, and then they say all the other families of police murders, you know, but we're not just all the other families. We're, you know, and just like it's really important to us just for people to know. I mean, even if not, just for people to know and for people to feel. So I'm hoping that my YouTube channel, I'm going to start downloading a lot of the work that we've been doing and intersperse that with the beauty of my child and just videos of him. It's just him on that page. So if you go on my Facebook page, you're going to see all sorts of stuff. If you go to the Instagram page or the YouTube page, it'll be 100% Kobe Heisler.
And then the spell his last name is Heisler?
Yes. And you can also find it as Dimmock-Heisler because legally that's his name. I even forgot about it. But yeah, we hyphenated his last name, but he never used Heisler, and I'm completely fine with him being known as Kobe Heisler. Okay, cool. But yeah, legally it's Dimmock Heisler, so if you look him up, you'll find both.
Thank you. Anything else you'd want to say?
Not right now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything you do.
For sure. We'll talk again because we'll try to get something put all the way together.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And and maybe I can get his dad to come out too. We have
I have some video of his dad speaking at some event.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, he's
got longer hair.
Yeah, he was the one that was with him every day.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He's certainly
someone to talk to.
He's more debilitated, so he's.
Oh, I got you. Yeah. It's hurting him. Yeah. I could see that. Yeah. I'm going to take the stream down, but can I get some last words from you?
Absolutely, you can. I wasn't even sure if you wanted to talk. Did you get any water?
I'll take a water.
Yes,
Yeah,
please
thank
take a couple of them. Please. You know, it gets hot out here. You gotta get your throat. This one is real cold for you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so you discovered this letter.
Yeah.
The letter sort of broke, sort of breaking news with the letter. You can hold this.
Okay.
Sort of breaking news with the letter. Can you just sort of rehash the letter, rehash the event today, and what your demands are?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked me that because, you know, I've been thinking about what somewhat of justice would look like. But to rehash that letter, Nico, it was devastating to say the least. When I got the letter from Paul Schnell, he called me and was like, I got some information for you that we found. And he was kind of hemming and hawing. He wasn't sure. He said, and I'm sorry. So I knew it wasn't good, but he said, I wanted you to get it first before anybody else got it. And he said, and after I send it to you, I'm CCing it to your attorney as well. So I was like, okay. Well, when I read the letter, I bawled for an entire day. I mean, I cried off and on that day. I was devastated because I was thinking, here the videos were that you did the interview with me. Those videos were bad enough, but now here's more what? And they left him in a urine soaked and on the floor and on the mat in his feces and urine and who knows what, sweat. And you heard what the lady said. The stench it overwhelmed her. And I have spoken to this nurse, but now that we are under investigation for the sake of making sure that I'm not interfering with that investigation, we've decided to wait and meet afterwards. But when she told me how hurt she was, we cried over the phone together. She was so happy that I reached out to her, and she kept saying, thank God somebody found those letters. I was wondering why, because she said she saw me in the news, and she kept wondering why was I mentioning these letters. She couldn't figure out. And then it dawned on her that, oh my gosh, she must have not found them. They must didn't have them. So she was so elated when we found these letters. She was like, oh my God. She was praising God because she's a God-fearing woman as well. She was like, yes, they found the letters. So it was like bittersweet because she knew that me finding the letters was going to mean that here I am going to be heartbroken pretty much all over again. And I was. But when she told me from her own voice how she felt and how it just haunted her, she couldn't sleep that night. She said she was wondering, should I reach out to this mother? I see her on the news. I need to tell her. She needs to know. She said all she did was she just kept praying. She just kept asking God, please let those letters surface so that because she didn't want to interfere. She didn't know if her getting in contact with me would cause damage to my case. So she just figured, let me just stay away. That's why we never, heard from her. So she did the right thing. And I thank God it was surfaced in the way it needed to be surfaced. Paul Schnell, because AG was finally agreeing to do an investigation under the authority of Governor Tim Walz. And we're so grateful. And that investigation began and they found these letters. So yeah, very bittersweet, but thanking God that they have been, revealed. And you asked me about justice. For me, a slight bit of justice would be they shut men down. And when I say shut them down, I'm talking about strip MEnD of the doctor of his license and then throw his butt in jail. He needs to go, not even to jail, he needs to go to prison. He needs to do prison time because what he did was criminal to Hardel. That was absolutely criminal. The nurses who worked side by side with him and knew that he was deteriorating, and one of the nurses in the letter says that one of the nurses called the doctor and said, well, he's deteriorating, like what should I do? And he said, oh well, he can wait until after the holiday. What? Wait till after the holiday. But don't jump to conclusions, particularly if somebody starts asking you questions about an investigation. He was prodding and prompting and trying to get them to, you know, like a puppet on a string. He was trying to get them to do what he wanted them to do. And so that would be some slight justice to start. Beltrami County Jail, shut them down. Shut them down. You heard what Traren said. It's a 20-year jail that's been abused and neglected as if it's been run down and is a 200-year-old jail. Shut them down. Beltrami County Jail's officers, they also need to be criminally charged. And of course, they need to lose their jobs. Those that weren't directly involved, that were indirectly involved, they need to lose their jobs. And those that were directly involved, criminal charges. And let me just put emphasis on this. I don't want to just have criminal charges. I want convictions. I want convictions, because we know criminal charges are just charges. You're still innocent until proven guilty, which is a conviction. So that's what I want, a conviction. That would be a slight, you know. And then to have the legislation, and they've already said they've agreed to invite me to go and talk about this duty of care bill. That would be a slight justice in having my input, going to share my story, and having it named in Hardel Sherrell's name. And then, of course, last but not least, my 3 babies, Hardel's babies, they need to be taken care of for life. They need to not worry about anything, because Hardel would have done everything he could have to provide for those 3 little girls. And so the least that they need to do is worry about where their next meal is going to come from, their housing, and all of that. They're gonna probably need mental health, you know, counseling and all of that. That should be paid for, all of that. I don't even care about myself. My babies, my 3 babies, need to be taken care of for life. They should not want for anything. That, to me, would be justice. That's what I'm demanding. That's what I'm demanding. I was asking at first, but that's what I'm demanding. I am demanding that the governor and whoever else needs to use their executive powers shut Beltrami County Jail down now, and whoever needs to do whatever they need to do with men and getting their license stripped, do it. It needs to be done. It needs to be done. So, and whatever I need to do, I'm going to do. I'm going to keep doing what I'm going to do to make sure it happens. So, yeah, I won't rest until my baby gets justice. Thank you. Thank you,
Where
Nico.
can people find more information about Hardel's case?
Well, first of all, it's all public information right now. Star Tribune has done a story. The Department of Corrections has done. It's all public now with the 5 pages of the violations. It's all been made public. And I guess they could just go to the Department of Corrections, Paul Schnell, reports, and find it that way. Of course, Unicorn Riot is always putting out the best and, you know, the truthful news that people can use. So, yes, if they follow Unicorn Riot, they will certainly be kept in the loop as to what's going on. So, yes. Justice for Hardel's page. I know there's so much. I'm sorry. I'm doing so much and I'm forgetting. But absolutely, Justice for Hardel's page. We put up different things and trying to keep everybody in the loop. And then eventually I will be starting my own organization, which is called Be Their Voices. So we're just getting started on getting a 501c3 up and running. And of course, you'll be able to go to betheirvoices.org and find out more and see what we're doing. So thank you again, Nico. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure, thank you.
Oh, man, that was awesome. Man, thank you so much, Nico. Man, Nico. Man, I gotta get. I know. I was like, I need a
I was trying
hug.
to tell you last week, but I didn't. I couldn't say that yet. But
I'm gonna wrap this up on the live stream, and then are you gonna be here in like 3 minutes? I'll wrap it up and talk to you for a
Here you
second.
go. Here you go. Don't forget your water paper. And if you need a few dollars, I got you.
Oh no, I'm okay. Yeah, thank you.
Nico.
So nice.
You're the man, Nico. You're the man.
Appreciate you. All right. Thank you all for joining. This is Nico from Unicorn Riot. We're here live in Sartell, Minnesota. Hey, thanks you too, man. We're here live in Sartell, Minnesota, and people are waving right now. That in the distance is MEnD Correctional Care sign. This building, I believe, or that building actually, I don't know why I was pointing at the other building first. I think this building is MEnD Correctional Care. That building is run, Dr. Leonard is part of that building and that organization. I'm not sure if he's the creator or the owner, but Dr. Leonard specifically told another healthcare employee to basically ignore Hardel Sherrell's case. Very negligent case. Hardel Sherrell died a torturous death inside Beltrami County Jail. After 9 days being in there, he had Guillain-Barré syndrome. He tried to ask for help numerous times. The COs told him and told other jailers and nurses that he was faking. They brought him to the hospital at Sanford Health, I think even all the way in Fargo from Beltrami County, which is in Bemidji, Minnesota. And they released him without taking him overnight. He died in jail the next day. Hardel Sherrell was 27. He died on September 2nd, 2018. His mother's been fighting steadfast since the day he died. That's his mother in the orange. She has filed a lawsuit against multiple entities, including Beltrami County, Bemidji, I think, Sanford Health, MEnD Correctional Care, and numerous doctors and correctional staff. One of the correctional staff was Calandra Allen, the jail administrator. There's a lot of cover-up involved in this case, as you heard some of the specifics and the details around that. The cover-up involves around COs, involves around nurses, involves around doctors, involves around MEnD Correctional Care, as well as Ramsey County Medical Examiner. So the list of grievances goes long, and the lawsuit that's filed by Shea Perry and by Shea's, that driving is the grandfather of Brian Quinones. Brian Quinones was killed in 2018 by police. We heard from Amity Dimmick, whose son, Kobe Heisler, was killed last year by police. They've now coming together to support each other. The rest of Hardel's case, a lawyer has filed a lawsuit. The lawyer we heard from today, the lawyer broke down some of the realities that they're facing and some of the cover-up. And we heard also how Ramsey County Medical Examiners played a part into that. So there's a lot of news coming around Hardel Sherrell's case. Hey, first, DOC ran an investigation. They found no fault. A review created by Paul Schnell at the DOC commissioner found that there was gross violations of jail standards. So Beltrami County Jail, very negligent, are being sued for their medical negligence leading to Hardel Sherrell's death. And a lot of information is now coming out beyond what we already knew. Unicorn Riot was the first ones to release jail footage from this case. Go to unicornriot.ninja. I think the article's harrowing footage shows man's last days in jail or something like that. You can probably find it in our prison tab for our categories. We also have a new article on this case about the re-review. The re-review came up with the gross violations that they found. We have the 5 pages of the re-review posted under our website. You can check that out, unicornriot.ninja. That article is also found in the prison tab on the categories. So again, thank you all for joining. This is Nico. We are Unicorn Riot, a nonprofit educational media organization bringing context to social and environmental struggles. Today we covered the case of Hardel Sherrell and some new evidence that came out with a letter that was written by a nurse explaining all of the horrid things that she saw and how the neglect was seeping through the seams in his case. So again, thank you all. Thank you, Jen, for running the back end. If you want to support, if you like our work, our independent work, we are only able to do this because of you. If you have the financial ability, definitely think about donating tax deductibly to Unicorn Riot. unicornriot.ninja/donate is one way to find a few of the platforms that we have to donate. You can also send us checks. There's information on our website for all of that stuff. Again, we are a nonprofit 501c3. I will tell you all of our social media platforms. You are ninja underscore ninja on Twitter, unicorn.riot on Instagram. We're on YouTube, Vimeo, and Facebook. Check us out on all these platforms. Continue to follow us. We have more media coming in the next few days as well as in the next months. We're continually trying to get as much media out as we can with our small org. Thank you all for joining and for allowing us to be your independent media and your alternative media. Thank you. Have a good day, and we're out.